Hello guys, Ancient Gameplays, and today I'm testing Starfield's FSR3 implementation, frame generation and upscaling, and I'm testing a bit of the XeSS as well, because XeSS was also implemented in the game. This video will be recorded and is recorded in ultra-wide, of course, 21:9, as well, that's the resolution of my monitor and I really enjoy it, so enjoy it as well. Firstly, we start with a 4070 Ti. I have the 4070 Ti installed in my computer, so I thought to myself, why not test the 4070 Ti firstly to see how it is running with FSR3 and XeSS. So firstly, let's start with the resolution, so 1440p ultra-wide. Graphics preset, well, basically it's everything set to maximum apart from motion blur, that is at low, and we have no upscaling whatsoever. So in Gagarin, with no upscaling whatsoever, we're having like 66, 65 FPS with a 4070 Ti. AMD cards just run this game much better, but still, 40, 60, 50 something FPS. Yeah, not that bad actually, not that bad. And just because of that, I'm gonna leave you with today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Maximum Settings, a cloud-based gaming service where you won't need to spend thousands of dollars to upgrade your PC or a personal nuclear plant to boot up your system. Just do it! And for as low as 9.95 Canadian dollars a month, you can play the most recent games on your computer, even if your hardware isn't prepared. Sign up today for your full Linux gaming PC with no resource sharing and start enjoying high-level gaming on any PC. As soon as we go to upscaling, and by the way, since this game uses XeSS now, I believe that they did the same as they did with Cyberpunk. I believe that it works now properly with Intel cards as opposed to before where it was a stuttery mess. Now let's start with the DLSS quality. And with the DLSS quality, we go immediately up to 80 FPS. One thing that the DLSS does well in this game, and this is one of the best parts, because we still have lots of flicker in some movements. Look at those garbage cans. As soon as I start moving the camera, we have lots of shimmer and movement artifacts, but those movement artifacts also happen without any kind of upscaling, so they're basically enhanced by the upscaling in a bad way. As you see, they have some already. Not as bad, of course, but they have some. As soon as we enable the DLSS, and the same applies for FSR, I'll show you. As soon as we enable the DLSS quality, yeah, we have these lights here that weren't supposed to be there at all, because the garbage bins don't have any light. Okay, they have here. They have here. So let me just put once again to native. Yeah, the DLSS kind of works better in this case, since the lights aren't showing at this. Yeah, but as soon as we go close, they do have LEDs. That's a good thing, I guess. So as soon as we enable the DLSS, the LEDs actually appear. Okay, we're still hovering really low FPS, in my opinion, really low, 79 only at 1440p ultra-wide with the DLSS upscaling, which basically leads to 960p ultra-wide, yes, 960p ultra-wide. As for the lighting, by the way, the lighting was improved with the latest patch. Well, the one before this one with FSR and XeSS, sorry, and the lighting on the faces of the characters looks much better now. It is definitely improved, the hair as well. As soon as we enable the frame generation from the DLSS, once again, frame generation, so we go up to 120 FPS. And if you look at the frame timeline, you can see that it is indeed a flat line, basically flat. We have some really small fluctuations, but I can tell you that 118 FPS and I can, well, it is smooth. It is way better than playing at 70. We have more info, but at the same time, look at those lights there, for example. As soon as I mess them around, you can see we have lots of flicker. We have motion artifacts. But this is a specific scenario. If we move it horizontally, for example, there's no issue. If we move it vertically, almost no issue. It's just like when we go in these movements, these fast movements. The same for other objects like the lights, the lamps, and some other things. But overall, the DLSS frame generation works pretty decently. One thing that the DLSS does versus the TAA implementation as well is that it removes a lot of noise that we have in some specific scenarios. Well, look at there. I will zoom in the video for you guys to see. Look at there. There's a lot of noise there. A lot of noise, a lot of shimmering, and we're running native resolution. Means that the TAA implementation on this game, is very, very poor. Look at this. And that's why FSR actually looks worse than DLSS in most games, because FSR does not use any kind of AI upscaling or anything like that, and it basically takes on the base TAA implementation of the game. And if the base TAA implementation of the game is already bad, well, it will work much, much worse. As soon as we enable DLSS, quality, bam, look at the difference. It's much better in this specific scenario, much better. So way less noise here, way less, almost non-existent. There in the top, we have no more shimmering there, and no more shimmering there. It's a very good thing of the DLSS. As soon as we go for, let's try FSR3. Let me just load the save game once again, because it is in the daytime where it makes the most difference. So once again, if you look there, if we zoom in there, so we still have lots of noise here, but still less noise than we do have with a native implementation. And there we have still less shimmering. We still have, well, quite a big amount of shimmering compared to the DLSS, but it is much better. FSR3 is much better than the native implementation. Look there. You have more data, but at the same time you have lots of shimmer, and it looks really, really bad. As soon as we enable the frame generation, bam, still working very nice. Now, the frame generation in this card is different, because remember, this is an NVIDIA card, and the frame generation doesn't work as good with NVIDIA cards as it does with AMD cards. I mean, NVIDIA's frame generation is made for NVIDIA cards, and that's why it works better there. And of course, AMD frame generation is made for AMD cards. It will work on other cards, but it is still better with the AMD ones. And it was giving less FPS because we're having the dynamic resolution, and it isn't using the quality mode. I'm sorry about that. Now we're using the upscaling only 74, and as you can see, horizontally we do not have any issues. Vertically we still have some, and when we do this, it's even worse. As for the garbage bins, well, they don't show the light as much as the DLSS, but they do this. As soon as you move the camera, there's a lot of shimmer there. As for now the frame generation, once again, let's enable frame generation properly now at quality settings, no dynamic resolution, and we go to 142 FPS. So we actually have more FPS. Yeah, we actually have more FPS than with the NVIDIA frame generation. We do have more FPS, but at the same time, the frame timeline is still, well, it's still not as good. I kind of feel that even though we have more FPS, the smoothness is more or less on par with the NVIDIA frame generation. And that's because the frame time is not as good as it should be. Now let's see the upscaling quality of XeSS. So we're running FSR3, as you can see. And as soon as we move the mouse, well, we have lots of shimmer here. And, well, there isn't actually much shimmering, but here we have a lot. Let's see how the DLSS actually helps in this specific scenario. I believe it's the DLSS 1.1 or 1.2, but at least 1.1 it must be, which is actually decent. And we do have more data there. So this should be light, not kind of a shadow. Oh, but it's not that great. Yeah, we do have look at this. Damn, son. Maybe they work better on Intel cards, but I thought it would be much better, sincerely. As soon as we enable FSR3 once again, off.
Gagarin doesn't want you.
Yeah, FSR is actually slightly better in this scenario. It still shimmers a lot here, but in the... if we look at it without moving the camera, look, we don't really have much shimmer, but as soon as we enable the DLSS in this specific scenario, or XeSS, yeah, we do have shimmer even with no camera movement, more than FSR3, which is actually impressive because usually XeSS tends to be better than yeah, it tends to be better than FSR3, but in this particular scenario, it seems that FSR3 does its job very well. And just before testing upscalers and frame generation with another card, let's say the XTX, the 7900 XTX, let's see another scenario. We're running at, well, it's indoors and we're running at Ultra once again, native resolution, 90-100. And the game actually looks kind of over-sharpened. It didn't look this way at the beginning, I believe, but after some updates, it kind of looks like this, and I don't really like it. So it's kind of over-sharpened, the looks of it, even at native resolution. As soon as we enable, let's say, DLSS quality, no frame generation, and yeah, we go immediately to 130 FPS. And now, since the game looks over-sharpened, I actually think that DLSS looks better than native resolution, especially in this scenario where, once again, we have lots of data, we have bags, we have tables, we have lots of details, and in those details, the over-sharpen actually kills the mood for me. And with the DLSS, it gets a little less sharpened, and in my opinion, looks considerably better. And of course, performs better at the same time, so it's a win-win situation. As soon as we enable the DLSS frame generation, oh, my bad, the DLSS frame generation, we go to 160 FPS, and well, I can notice the latency. It's not that much actually. I believe it's really well done because the latency is not that much. The game performs pretty well. In this specific scenario, we do have slightly more movement artifacts. If we especially look at the floor when moving, we kind of see that there are some movement artifacts. It isn't that perfect, but still. Or for example, in this scenario, look, those are small things overall, and it looks pretty good. FSR3, quality mode, 67%, nice. And once again, I prefer the FSR3, even FSR3, I prefer FSR3 on an NVIDIA card versus the native resolution in this game, because once again, the native resolution is over-sharpened, and I do like the feeling, the looks and the feeling of FSR3 here. But overall, it looks fine. It sincerely looks fine. Let's see, for example, with the frame generation. And with the frame generation, we go up to 180 FPS, which is a bit more than we had with NVIDIA's frame generation, a bit more. I'm going out of my monitor's refresh rate, so some motion artifacts that I might be seeing here might not actually be motion artifacts, and they actually might be tearing because I'm at 190 FPS. So I'll be seeing tearing because my monitor is 160 Hz. We have basically no motion artifacts. Let's see on that side specifically. Yeah, it works basically perfectly. It works really well. The frame generation here works pretty well, and I can tell you right away that FSR3 frame generation, even on an NVIDIA card, has lower input latency. I can feel it, at least on this part that I'm testing, has lower input latency than NVIDIA's frame generation. NVIDIA's frame generation might be slightly better, but I can't really tell because we're still having more FPS with FSR3 frame generation. It might be better in terms of quality, but in terms of latency, FSR3 frame generation is definitely better. Let's, just before going to the XTX, let me just see how XeSS actually handles things here. And I believe that frame generation should be unlocked from upscaling. So we should be able to use frame generation without any kind of upscaling, for example, frame generation with XeSS. And well, I have to tell you that XeSS here also looks fine. This seems to be a situation where upscalers actually work well. XeSS works fine here. Nothing really shimmering much. Things look good overall. Let me see that part. Oh, that rail here. We see it shimmering a bit. The rails here, as soon as we move, for example, let's try these. We see them, well, shimmering a bit. Let's try FSR. Dynamic resolution off. Yeah, it shimmers more. In this specific scenario, yeah, FSR3 shimmers more for sure. DLSS, not that much. Or in this case, XeSS, not that much. Yeah, XeSS works better than FSR3 in the scenario, as opposed to the scenario we had in Gagarin, where FSR3 was better. I guess it depends a bit. As for the DLSS, yeah, the DLSS is the one that, well, does a better job here. The DLSS is still a bit over sharpened compared to the other upscalers, but in terms of shimmering look, it's the better one. It is the one that shimmers the less. Although on here it shimmers more, it is shimmering a bit more, while FSR3 might not do that. Dynamic resolution off. Yeah, while FSR3 actually shimmers more here, but shimmers less here. Interesting, definitely interesting. The thing is, once again, FSR3 frame generation, frame timeline is still quite worse than it should be on the NVIDIA side. So the frame time is not as good as with NVIDIA's frame generation. So let's try the 7900 XTX. Now, after changing the card to the 7900 XTX, so basically installing the drivers, chipset drivers, doing everything as it should, EDU, etc., now we're back at 1440p ultra-wide with the 7900 XTX, and please do not take this as a GPU or CPU comparison, because this is not one. And I'm running, once again, I'm running maximum settings, 1440p ultra-wide, as you can see, no upscaling whatsoever. And I'm running the 7900 XT in saving power mode, or power saving mode. I was speaking in Portuguese. In power saving mode, and as you can see, 270 watts, limited to 2400 MHz, which will obviously decrease the performance. At 2900 MHz, you'll have way bigger performance, but that's not the case here. I just want to test XeSS and FSR3 and FSR3 frame generation now. So as you can see, once again, native. Even with the AMD cards, lots of shimmer, lots of shimmer. We enable FSR3, no frame generation whatsoever. Let's put it to 67%. And yeah, it works already much better with way less shimmering. Okay, it has less data, of course, but way less shimmering. And the noise is also considerably lower. Not that much, but considerably lower as well. But okay, we have lots of shimmer there. If we look from here, it is shimmering a lot. And as for the lighting, yeah, once again, it works better than XeSS, at least on the NVIDIA side. And here, yeah, but we still have lots of... When moving the camera, we have lots of artifacts, but close enough and without any camera movement, it actually seems good. Let's try, for example, XeSS and see how it rolls. XeSS quality as well. And yeah, in this particular part, yeah, it is not as great. It still shimmers a lot even without moving the camera, and the same applies to this specific scenario. And if we move the camera, it is much worse than FSR3 here. On this other part, on the other hand, it does shimmer less. So I guess it's a trade-off. In some scenarios, XeSS is better, in others, FSR3 wins. Let's see XeSS on that specific part on the beginning, on Gagarin as well, because I really want to see. Yeah, XeSS still shimmers a lot. Well, not a lot, it still shimmers a bit, but it does sustain more, yeah, it does sustain more data. It has more visual fidelity compared to FSR. You can see all the rails there, while if you use FSR, yeah, we have less info. We can't even see the poles. And if we zoom in, we can see the difference. At the same time, we're having 88 FPS with FSR, and with the XeSS we have 81. So we do have more info there. It works better, let's say, and it does have less noise here than FSR, but at the same time, once again, we have less FPS. And with the frame generation in this specific scenario, we go up to 156 FPS using FSR once again, and I believe that I need to, no, 67%, okay? 153 FPS, and look at the frame timeline. The frame timeline is much better with the XTX, with the 7900 XTX, than with the 4070 Ti, because once again, the frame generation from AMD was made for AMD cards and not for NVIDIA ones or Intel ones. So yeah, it kind of works better, and it does feel more fluid. I'm having a bit of tearing because, once again, I'm usually sometimes over the 160 FPS mark, and when I do that, well, I have tearing because, yeah, I'm out of my monitor's refresh rate on FreeSync. Back in the key, the FPS numbers with FSR3 frame generation are just over the top. We're pushing like 250 as opposed to before with the 4070 Ti. In this specific scenario, the XTX pushes way more FPS. Once again, 238, but this is not an FPS comparison. One thing that I noticed is that compared to the NVIDIA cards when I'm using FSR3 frame generation with the 4070 Ti, this HUD part would stutter a lot. And with FSR3 frame generation on an AMD card, it does not stutter as much. So basically, not as much motion artifacts as it had with the NVIDIA card, with the 4070 Ti. So it seems that in some scenarios, FSR3 does work better with the AMD cards compared to the NVIDIA ones. But once again, well, that was expected. Let me see this part that we were testing before. Maybe was this one? Yeah, it's still. In this specific side, it still shimmers a lot. As soon as we go to XeSS, sadly we have to disable the frame generation. XeSS quality, and it still shimmers a lot here, or a bit, let's say, but overall it is more stable. If I use FSR3 without frame generation, yeah, I still prefer FSR3 versus XeSS. In terms of sharpness and so on, XeSS might be better in some scenarios, and since with FSR you have more FPS and you can enable frame generation, I believe it's a win-win situation. If I use with FreeSync, with VSync, my bad. Yeah, now I can use frame generation with VSync. Yeah, we still have some motion artifacts here and there. Yeah, but it works smooth. Does have more input latency, definitely. I can feel way more input latency, but at the same time it works smooth as butter. Frame generation was not meant to work with VSync in the first place, but it works very, very well actually. I mean, like I told you, locked to 160 FPS and it is smooth as butter. Let's see how it runs in new Atlantis. Because this specific part is really CPU heavy. It's one of the parts where the frame generation can actually help. And once again, we're running VSync 160 FPS, and as you can see, the GPU is pushing more power here because this part is heavier. And yeah, man, it just runs great. In this specific part in New Atlantis, it just runs great. I can't even complain. It really does look great, and the smoothness is. Yeah, as long as you keep inside your monitor's refresh rate, FSR3 frame generation will do a very good job. And now, even if you want to disable the VSync in this scenario to go over 160, we have 177 and of course 180, and of course I do have some, sorry about that, I do have some tearing, but that's because of the monitor, not because of the game. As I showed you before, with VSync it just works perfect. And if I just get rid of the frame generation and use the upscaling alone, I have 100 FPS. So I won't go to double FPS, but it is really close to that. It is really close to the double FPS numbers, and it just works very well. And if you want, you can just go with VSync. You have more input latency, but it just works better, really, really smooth. Let's try, for example, XeSS here, just to finish the video. Yeah, XeSS does have some issues. Look at the CJs, for example. When moving, we can see a bit, at least I can see a bit of shimmering with XeSS. As soon as we enable FSR3, yeah, we have even more shimmering in this scenario. But we also have more FPS. Oh. This part is, yeah, we have lots of shimmer here with FSR3. It is really a trade-off, and it is fun to test. So XeSS also has shimmer. It shimmers, but at the same time it shimmers a bit less in some specific parts compared to others. If it was much better than FSR, like DLSS is in this scenario, XeSS would be definitely the way to go. Since it is just a bit better in some scenarios and still worse in others, I would still just use FSR3. It's much better. Just pump it up, pump the frame generation together, and damn, it just feels much smoother. And if you don't really care much about the input latency, you can just select the VSync, and you do have more input latency, but at the same time, it will be butter smooth. Just works really good. Can't really complain, and I will definitely be playing Starfield with the frame generation enabled. Maybe I can, if I have to do FreeSync, well, or VSync, I can actually push the render resolution scale a bit, let's say to 80%, to have a higher base resolution but still using the frame generation. So I won't have to upscale as much, and I will still be inside. I will still be inside the I will still be inside my refresh rate, which is a win-win situation for me. So yeah, closer to native resolution with FSR while still having 160 FPS. And I can keep pushing it. I can keep pushing it to 90%. Really close to native resolution while using the frame generation, and I still have 155, 160. And at the same time, it feels just much better because I'm really close to native resolution, but using the frame generation, which in my point of view, it's really a win-win. The upscaling, well, could be way better, but the frame generation technique is really well implemented. Yeah, definitely using it from now on. And well guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. Leave your comment in the comment section. And once again, if you enjoyed this video or if you want to know anything more about it, well, just let me know in the comment section and I'll answer as fast as I can. As for me, I will say it once again, frame generation will be on from now on my gameplay of Starfield. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.